What is up, gang? This is the X-Teen Featurette channel. I'm Chris, and today's Friday, so we have another TGIX review video. And today, I'm going to be reviewing Positive ID, which was sent to me for review by Kino Lorber. This is a new release in their Studio Classics line, and oh my gosh, what a lot of fun. This is a 1986 release, a good year, a very good year. So, this is the entire reason why I love Studio Classics, because I had never seen this movie before. And, being able to catch it for the first time on glorious high definition Blu-ray disc, it's awesome. So, spoiler alert, I love this movie, and here's why. I will not, by the way, I try to not spoil things in my reviews, so there is a little twisteroo in this. So, I feel like I've seen a fair amount of movies in my lifetime. So I think that, I can sense when something's like coming, and I kind of feel like a lot of times, probably like most of you, I can get a sense of what's going to happen in the plot. But from the get-go in this, it was so bizarre that I had no idea what the angle was or where it was going. So firstly, this is an independent film. This was written and directed by Andy Anderson, who had, I think he had a handful of films, but this was later picked up by Universal. So it was not a big production, even though Universal later picked it up. It was definitely an independent film, but to me, it didn't feel like one. It had the feel of a big production, except for some like little nuances here and there. So a little bit about the plot. It starts off in a car at a party, and this woman, a couple, they are, very reluctant to go in. The woman says, she doesn't want to go in, and she's like, oh, everyone wants to gawk at the town whore. And I'm like, what's going on here? We later learn that the woman is Julie, played by Stephanie Rasco, and the man is Don, I believe, played by John Davies. And I think John Davies joined Andy Anderson in his other films too. So he was an interesting dude, but this also had, what's her name? Lauren Lane, who played Cece Babcock in The Nanny. I was like, is that Cece? So yes, it was. She's in here, and she plays a really cool character. It basically opens with Julie and Dawn in the car, and, they're basically sitting outside of a party that is for Julie, but she doesn't want to go in, so they leave. And the next scene, they get home like kind of late at night from this party that they didn't go to, and she's the town whore, and she is having a mental breakdown in the shower. She's like, I'm gonna go shower. And Dawn, I think his name is Dawn, he proceeds to just call a doctor, say, I think she's not doing really well, you better come over and check it out. Then he proceeds to receive a couple faxes, make some business calls, and it keeps cutting back and forth between Julie having these mental breakdowns in the shower and him just totally calmly conducting business. And I'm like, okay, from that very first scene, I'm like, this is bizarre, and I'm all about it. So it had me hooked from that. And it kind of snowballs. We learn little bits and pieces about what happened to Julie and why she's having a mental breakdown. So her concerned neighbor friend, Dana, who was played by Lauren Lane, she checks on her a couple times, but mostly she's checking on Dawn. There's a little, something going on there between them. And she oh my God, whenever she was introduced, she walks in the house and she's like, Julie, where are you? And she just casually like rifles through her through her personal effects. She's going through her drawers, looking at her prescription medication sitting on. She just wanders, helps herself up into her bedroom, and then starts nebbing through her through her medications and stuff. And she actually pockets some, but it was in like a little blister pack. I'm like, she pocketing some Tylenol PM? Like, what's going on here, Dana? Like, she just totally passed up all the prescription stuff and went straight for the OTC. But, hey, good for you if you want to pocket your neighbor's Tylenol PM. But, yeah, she was definitely a little, what we call here in Pittsburgh, a neb nose. So she was nebby. But, yeah, I was like, this is increasingly bizarre. And then we learn about there was some sort of tension between, you know, we get the impression that Julie was maybe the victim of a sexual assault, and she had not had sex with her husband for a year, so Dawn's feeling a little pent up, and you know, maybe neighbor Dana's there to help with that. We don't really learn too much about that, but and what I really do like about this movie is that it divulges the information. There's no really big climax to the movie. It doesn't like build up suspense. It just kind of keeps unfolding. The scenes keep unfolding at a very steady pace, and we learn bit by bit what's going on. It doesn't divulge a lot of information at once. We kind of have to piece it together for ourselves. And for that reason, that's why I wasn't really sure what direction this was going. So we eventually learn that Dawn and Julie have 2 young girls, very cute little kids, and they're kind of aware that mommy's in a bad spot. You know, mommy's a little out there. So, you know, they're looking kind of concerned. I posted on Instagram a scene of Julie kind of spaced out on drugs, kind of like looking around while she's supposed to be following some cooking show, but the cooking show in and of itself in the background was just bizarre. She's like, oh, you know, just reach your fingers up in there in the bird's cavity and now you're legally engaged to the bird in 14 states, ha ha ha. I'm just like, what is this? So that was fun. But so Julie has these kids, and basically she's bedridden out of her mental state. You know, we learned that she was a victim of a brutal attack, and we pieced together that it was probably of sexual nature, and she's having a hard time living her life because of it. She had to quit her job. We're not sure if that's why or if it was because she had kids, but at either rate, you know, she's not working. So she's watching the news with Dawn one day, and she hears a story on the news about like, well, you know, this many, it's shocking, but there's a ton of people that assume the identity of dead persons and live their lives with this new identity. And she's like, what's going on here? And then I think the very next scene was her having to do some mundane paperwork for her daughter's school, but she goes to the school and she's like, yeah, we need her birth certificate. And she's like, well, I don't have it. They're like, oh, just file a request. And the secretary at the school is like, oh, you can file a request for anybody's birth certificate. It doesn't, you know, we used to do that, but now we don't. And I'm just like, well, that's a helpful bit of information. It's just like very timely information, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I get the impression she's going to take somebody's identity. So that's what happens. There is a montage where she begins to research her possible identities. Lewis Switcher perked up whenever he heard the montage music, so that was up his alley. But we see her researching her possible identities, and then she basically picks one. And at first you think that she's just like some daffy broad out there, but then you realize how brilliant and calculating she really is. She does a lot of very interesting things, like, and at first we don't really understand why. You know, she asks her husband to purchase an antique vase, and you know, every single step that she takes is leading her to this alternate identity that she wants to assume. And my first reaction was, oh, she's just, you know, bored with her life, and this is a coping mechanism, trying to become somebody else. But how wrong I was. And I will not divulge why she's taking these steps, but holy crap, you should definitely watch this for yourself, because it was, and I'm not even going to say, but it was just so very creative and, yeah, very calculating. It is definitely a mystery movie. The mystery is the main element, not knowing what's going on or, you know, what's going to happen next. But there are some pretty brutal things that go on at points. She takes some drastic measures to conceal her identity and to keep her story straight. So that was interesting. And then at one point she starts being followed. And it's like, well, who could possibly be following her? So we pieced together that she was the victim of sexual assault, and I was the victim of sexual assault years ago. And so I am very, very critical of movies that hinge around this like plot point. You know, movies like I Spit on Your Grave and those types of revenge flicks, where that's the main focus, and they keep putting it in your mind, like, oh, this person went through this, you know, brutal attack. And that was not this at all. It was kind of like her attack was more coincidental, and it wasn't the main focus. It was just part of the story to understand like why she's doing this. Very interesting that they didn't focus on it or dwell on it, or, you know, that was, to me, that really stood out. As far as the characters go, we aren't really, the movie doesn't really hold our hands and tell us what these people are about. So, you know, we can make our own assumptions about Julie and what happened to her and what her motives are. But then there's her husband, who wasn't a huge character. He's a supporting role, but, you know, we see him enough. And there's just certain things that go on that make you really wonder, because he seems like a very protective, caring husband, like almost like the coddling type of, you know, oh, you're ill, we need to take care of you, like you can't take care of yourself. And that is what's really interesting, is that it seems like for a while Julie entertains the drugs and stuff, the psychological drugs that she must be on, and at some point she's just like, oh, I'm bored of this, so she takes things into her own hands. So really, there's no point to her being coddled and cared for by her husband and her psychologist or psychiatrist, because she has things figured out and she takes charge of her own life. Unbeknownst to him, nobody has any idea that she's standing up for herself and she's like, you know, taking charge of her own life. What's also interesting is that in most movies that a character dons an alternate persona, they usually abandon their previous life, I feel like, and pick up this new life. She does not abandon her family. She's living a double life for the duration. She's like, oh, I gotta go out of town on a realtors convention or something. I'm just like, damn, these realtors are having conventions like every single weekend. Like, what's going on? It's insane, the amount of time, but he's just like, oh, I don't really like this, but I can't stand in the way of your career. I'm like, she is so calculating, because she went back to work to have this alibi for where she is. And, yeah, she's just brilliant. So very, very cool. There is a scene where her husband was like groping her in her sleep when she was like medicated, and I'm like, it gives you a sense that this guy is feeling like, after a year of no action, he's feeling like, oh, well, you know, I mean, technically he's abusing his wife. He's sexually abusing his wife because she's literally knocked out sleeping and he's copping a feel. I'm just like, so, you know, is he really like no much better than, you know, willing to subject her to what happened again? You know, it's just kind of strange. So is he a caring husband, or would he succumb to Dana's wiles, you know, the neighbor? You know, we have to make that call for ourselves. So just really cool to like think about that stuff. The husband character looked like a very skinny John Cena, so that kind of creeped me out a little bit. The only other thing that I have to note is that at the very end of the credits, because, you know, I am obsessed with credits, I love to see where they filmed things and, you know, who they gave special thanks to, or any other weird things that they put in the credits. And they had something weird in the credits. There was like a little quote, I think at the very end, and it said something about the cast, and it said, "We made this film the hard way." And I'm like, what's the hard way? But yeah, no, I mean, considering it was an indie production, I'm sure they did do it the hard way. That's really all that I am going to divulge about the plot, because I don't want to go into too much detail and spoil something, because really I think that watching this movie unfold is so much fun and seeing where it goes. So I highly recommend checking this one out. Let's talk about the physical release. We have the special features are audio commentary by entertainment journalist and author Brian Reisman, and theatrical trailer. And I did watch both. The theatrical trailer is a little bit different. If you look up the trailer here on YouTube, it's slightly different than this one, and I don't recommend it. Don't look up the trailer on YouTube because it spoils everything. The one on here is totally different, and it doesn't spoil it nearly as much, but I highly recommend checking out the trailers after you watch it. The audio commentary, the guy was, I really enjoyed it. Some really good information. And the interesting thing is Brian Reisman, he actually said that he interviewed both Stephanie Rasco and John Davies over the phone prior to filming the commentary track. So he had some really good information from them. He kind of had little quips like, oh, Stephanie said this or John said this. So that was very interesting. If they couldn't appear on the commentary themselves or on an interview, that's the next best thing. So that is really cool that he did that. And, a lot of good information on the commentary also. He had some more to say about Andy Anderson's movies and the production of this. So it was really, really cool. Really enjoyable commentary. This is a 95-minute movie, right there in the sweet spot. As far as the picture quality, there's still a little bit of grain. It just looks like an 80s movie. It's definitely better than DVD quality. It's not like crystal clear picture, but it's definitely an upgrade from DVD quality. And I will say the colors are very vibrant in this, so it's a very solid Blu-ray release. The sound was really good too. There was the music was great, the sound was great. The music was very heavy on saxophone, as it was in that time period. So many thanks to Kino Lorber for sending this for review. Such a great film, highly suggested. Not like laugh out loud funny, but I found a lot of humor in it, and that's not something that is normally incorporated well in mystery. So really original film. Very much enjoyed it. So thank you to Kino Lorber. Thank you to you for watching this. And if you haven't subbed, give me a subscription. Come back and watch my review next week. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week with another review. Bye.